Thank you for this provocative and seminal discussion. As I'm not a specialist in economy, I would prefer to hear more competent questions and comments from you. So please feel free to have the discussion for 10 or let's say 15 minutes. Please.
Sorry, Dragas, I don't feel able to unpack your fascinating, psychological evidence. But if I could just make an observation that we try to combine Hungary, Romania and Bulgaria concerning ethnic antagonism. They have been touched upon to different extents this afternoon, and also this morning, and try to make a link between ethnicity and the degree to which society is preoccupied with the past of a country. When I was approached at the interval by the editor of a history magazine, which I think everyone has heard of here, called Magazine Story, and I think it is one of 2 or 3 history magazines in Romania. Can I ask you, Martin, how many regular history magazines appear in Bulgaria? There is one. Every month?
4 times a year. 4 times.
Oh, that's very little. Are there regular history magazines in Hungary?
At least 3.
So there is an appetite, there is a kind of preoccupation with the past in 2 of the 3 countries. I mean, I was surprised by your comment that there was a real danger of a Serbia-type scenario in Bulgaria, because because the Bulgarians seem to me to have always had a rather pragmatic attitude towards the vicissitudes of their history. And more people in Bulgaria, I think, have got involved in capitalism when you have got a popular capitalism. So people with energy have found outlets, whereas maybe in Romania, because people have no outlets for their energy, they become more introspective, and the past hangs heavy over them. Just ending with Hungary, I mean, is it a provocative remark to make that probably Hungary, over a long period, has been the most nationalistic country across Eastern Europe, and this wasn't really revealed because of the political trajectory? It's a very soft exit from communism in the 1990s, and now you have referred to the social tensions in northeastern Hungary between what you call gypsies and Hungarians, and that seems to me to be a real tension, much more than maybe confrontations in Western Yugoslavia, confrontations in Transylvania between Magyar Hungarians and Romanians. I mean, I'm wondering now, but so I will stop.
This is for Dr. Sarachika's further suggestion. When you said about how you should ask, was it worse in communism or was it good in communism, maybe it would be better not to have 2 subsamples, but to have these 2 questions in different places in the interview guide or the questionnaire. So then you could check upon the reliability of the answers.
I have 2 questions. One to Mushka, and it's related actually to the point made by Tom. The difference between the 2 cities, is it Is it also related to the fact that one of the cities was in ethnically, let's say, challenged region, and maybe that influenced to a certain extent in the government investment? I don't know, just a question. And in reference to Dragoš's and Vlad's presentation, I was thinking at one point that maybe there might be a flaw at the very root of your hypothesis, in the sense of you're measuring happiness and you're understanding or you're interpreting the results of the question was better or worse before 1989 on stemming from the concept of happiness. But as I was looking at the graphs that you're presenting, I think that to a certain extent you might be overlooking one important issue, the understanding of happiness that large sections of the Romanian population have, even at the personal level, might be still influenced by the understanding, the idea of socialist happiness, the idea of happiness as has been socialized or induced within the population by the communist regime and by, let's say, the ethics of the socialist ethics that have been so predominant before 1989. I think that to a certain extent you could see that in indicators of leisure or indicators of tourism, because a lot of the leisure and tourism under communism was imposed by the state or even invented by the state, and then perceptions of state expenditure after 1989 are not perceived as being favorable to the population, despite the fact that they're at the same level, exactly because they're not framed in the same way as they were framed before 1989.
Just a second. One small, actually two small comments. As regard your proposition to separate the two questions regarding the perception of communism in the poll, we will have a second one in the next 1 or 2 weeks, and we actually separated the two questions. And a question for you. I suppose the main issue remains, because as we saw, the figures are tricky, so they don't speak for themselves. And the main question is, why is this terrible gap between perceptions and the actual reality reflected in figures?
Thank you very much. I was very much interested by your presentations. I have 2 questions and then one small comment. First question to Martin Ivanov. You said somehow that in spite of, let's say, slow pace of reforms from 90 to 97, in 97 the change was already irreversible. Or at least this I seemed to perceive from your presentation. Was it because of, let's say, the accumulation of small changes of the scope, or was it because of the terrific failure of this policy in 96 to 97? The question regarding the two Hungarian cities. You presented them very interestingly, also the differences and also the similarities. But basically about the difference, was it more because of, let's say, agency in the terms of, you mentioned somewhere that in Catalonia the city management was better and there were more resources, etc., etc. Or was it more due to structural factors like geographic location, infrastructural endowment, workforce, etc., etc.? What would be your short answer to this, let's say? And regarding, I'm very much interested in your project, and I claim your, let's say, endeavor to measure happiness. And what I am a bit unhappy is the fact you had to put the discussion on purchasing power before 89, because there is a nominal and there is the problem. For example, meat was let's say 37 lei a kilo, but you couldn't find it and you bought it with 100 lei, and this falsifies everything.
Okay, let's see here the discussion.
Can I have also comment on this paper? I find this project very interesting because this problem of communist nostalgia is still very big in Bulgaria as well. And your research reminded me of a publication by one of my friends and collaborators, economist in trade, Bogdanovsky and Georgi Ganek, and in a less refined approach, what he found out was that there was a problem with data before '89, but not in the statistical point of view. In the point of view that this communist system had an inbuilt tendency of over-reporting. You, as a director of a factory, had to over-report because of various reasons explained very well by Corona, so I don't have to explain that. Now, due to tax reasons, you have a tendency to under-report. So this is one explanation. The other explanation was that people tend to understand change, economic growth, as in industry, as this kind of chimneys, smoking chimneys, which we just saw on the example of Hungary. And because the new growth of Bulgaria, because he was trying to explain why we have 10 years of growth and everybody is still miserable. The new economic growth was based on different type of more invisible industries, and that's why, etc. And the third approach to that is by another friend of mine who is a social anthropologist, and he studies Bulgarian village. And probably it's not that relevant to Romanian case, but it could apply as well to a certain extent. Between 1955 and 1975, 2.5 million out of 7 million Bulgarians had moved from rural areas to cities. This was the first time in their life that they had running water, not to mention hot water, water closets, everything you name it. This came during the communist period. So the starting position was so low that they somehow subconsciously, unconsciously connect one with the other.
Thank you very much for excellent feedback. I'll try to be very brief because you need to stay in time. Definitely the urbanization thing was happening in Romania too, and definitely this is applying to Romania. This is a huge and important challenge. And the things that also have mentioned about purchasing power parity, about the distortion of the data, about the under or over reporting, and that shows the importance of the research that you should be doing in this area. Just because we need to understand what's going on today, we need to compare with something that is reliable in the past. And this is a huge research agenda for the new generation of people that are interested in economic history, economics, and political economy, sociology, and anthropology. It's very important to see those bumps and all those data clarified and better understood. And I can't agree more with Professor Nijescu than the example that he has given with purchasing power parity is excellent. I mean, you may have the purchasing power, but you have nothing to buy from the stores. How do you quantify that? And that takes me to my second point. I'm trying to connect the two things about the gap between perception and reality, and about the expectations. Look, we're looking at the data, and sometimes you may think that the data are everything. But what different, we have to go beyond that to a sort of residual, which is extremely important, and look at the kind of dynamics and institutional structure and political process that has been pointed out by Professor Gallagher in the book that we launched the day before yesterday, in which he is pointing out about how the expectations and the structures of the communism are actually infusing and continuing to grow within the Romanian society, despite these numbers. I mean, this is what you're showing in your book, that I'm looking at these numbers, but